Okay, hello everybody. Welcome back to our remote writing workshop. I missed you guys last week. I'm so excited to dive into this week's topic with Erin about why you should hire an editor. So many writers spend such a long time perfecting their work that once they complete the manuscript, they want to consider it completely done. But it's extremely important that as a writer, you take it a step further and seek out an editor to polish your work before you submit it to a publisher, and especially if you want to self-publish. So let's talk about the basics. Do you really need to hire an editor? It's an expensive step, Erin.
It is, but the answer is yes. It's extremely important to hire an editor if you want to have the best, most polished final product possible, whether you're presenting it to an agent, a publisher, and especially if you're self-publishing. So really think of it as an investment that you really need. So after so much time and effort, you don't want to mess it up at the very end and forget the most important step, or one of the most important steps. So you've spent months, years, decades for some people perfecting your work. So do you really want to, at the very end, submit it to a publisher or an agent or self-publish when it's not completely stellar? And do you want to cut corners at the very end? No. So you can always find someone within your budget if you shop around. And if you really are on a budget, you can even look at, for instance, like hiring an English student at the local college who wants to make a few bucks and, flex their editing skills. So there are options.
Definitely. And just as this is something I tell a lot of authors, like when you publish a book, especially with nonfiction, if this is something that you are wanting to plant your flag, consider yourself a thought leader, really bring your expertise to the world, it needs to be edited. It needs to be beautifully done. Even if you're a fiction writer, it's so important. You're going to have your name on it. This is going to be your piece of work. Do you really want your piece of work to reflect you in a negative way? No, you do not. So investing in editing and investing in the right publisher is investing in yourself, because this book is you. This is your baby, your work, your thoughts, your ideas, and you really want it to reflect the best possible version of you, not reflect anything negative.
Right. If you're giving a keynote address, you're not going to, not button up correctly or brush your hair, or, all of these little things. You want to present yourself in the best way possible so you don't look like a slacker, or, you want to look really good.
Best face forward, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
All right. So yes, you should hire an editor. I'm just going to say that again. Yes, you need to hire an editor. Now tell us why, Erin. You being an editor, you know this better than anyone.
I'm a bit biased. Well, first of all, always good to get a fresh set of eyes. No matter how good a writer you are, you're going to miss mistakes. Period. You will. And an editor is going to pick up not only on grammatical issues, but overall content issues. And they're going to address any questions that readers might have and give you the chance to make changes before the book gets to that final reader. So you're so close to your work, it's really easy to overlook issues and problems that might be glaringly obvious to others. So before you submit to agents and publishers, before you self-publish, that's the time to make changes, because all of these little issues, most writers are blind to them because you're so close to the work. So bringing in someone new, all these things are just going to jump out at them like crazy. So then you can fix them. Also, editors provide you with professional feedback. A lot of editors, most editors hopefully, have years of professional experience, which means they can provide a unique insight and feedback to improve your writing. And so whether it's straight proofreading, copy editing, or content editing, or both, an editor can polish your manuscript in a way you cannot by viewing it from an industry professional's POV. And many freelance editors have experience in top publishing houses, and they can provide the feedback from an insider's viewpoint. So they can bring up angles that are important to publishers that you've never even considered. So you're just thinking really about the writing and the content, and an editor who's worked at a publishing house can bring up all of these other ideas like marketing, what publishers are looking for, what they're not looking for, things like that. Another reason to hire an editor is, of course, the polished final product. When you are in a situation where either the publishing house or the agent can reject your manuscript on any grounds, do you really want to give them any other reason to do it? No. So to submit a manuscript riddled with errors, terrible idea. especially if you have a chance to improve it and polish it. So remember, publishers and agents see hundreds of submissions every year, if not more than that, and you want it in the best shape possible to make it stand out in a good way. And if you're self-publishing, this is your last chance to get rid of typos and other grammatical errors. And trust me, there's nothing readers hate more than finding typos. When I worked at the bigger or the more traditional publishing houses, we would get irate letters from readers who were like, they found one typo and they would be so mad. These are readers, it's like their profession to find typos. So it makes you look very unprofessional, and you want your book to compare to very polished, professionally published books. And you really don't want to look like an amateur in that way. And even if you think you're good at grammar and proofreading, I mean, even professionals, for instance, we were just talking about this, Kesley. I am constantly figuring out the new and improved rules of grammar. I mean, they're always changing. And little things, I'm still learning little things. For instance, like the phrase, "you're such a trooper." That's spelled T-R-O-U-P-E-R. It's not O-O-P-E-R, and everyone thinks it is. So little things like this that people who this is their profession, they're going to know. So, little details. So, yeah.
Yeah, and since words are constantly, there are like new slang words and new words for everything. And to kind of comment on your point, Erin, we discussed this a little bit earlier, but when you're reading a book and when you pick up a book and you find a typo or a grammatical error, you begin to judge it a little bit. You're kind of judging, that book, the author. And, this is not to sound snobbish or anything of the like, but I remember when I was 11 or 12 and I was reading this series I was so into, and I would find constant typos and errors as an 11 and 12-year-old. I was just like, this should not be happening, because it kind of makes you question, how much work was spent into, putting this out there and making sure it's the best that it can be. It doesn't look good on you. It doesn't look good on your publisher. And just taking that extra step and making sure everything is very polished. Like Erin said, even if you are an expert editor yourself and you are writing your first novel, you still need a fresh set of eyes. Even the best editors, because they look at their work so much, other people are going to find mistakes, because that is just how your brain starts to see things in a consistent way when you read over and over and over again, that you start to miss small things. And that's why you have someone else for help.
I always go to an editor for big chunks of writing. I will hand it off and say, take a look at this, because I know your brain starts to read mistakes as correct when you're close to the work. So usually I will read things backwards. I'll read all my sentences backwards, but even a lot of times that's not enough. So it's always great, yes, to hand it off to that fresh set of eyes.
Definitely. Okay, what can a writer expect from a book edit?
Well, first of all, the different kinds, you have content editing and then copy editing and proofreading. So a content editor, they're going to suggest revisions to content, of course, characters, plot, style, structure, dialogue, the flow of ideas. And this means that you as a writer, you'll still have work to do. So you need to take your editor's suggestions and decide whether to run with them. And then you're going to have to tackle another round or two of revisions. So this will go back and forth. So if you hire a content editor, don't think you're just, I'm out, I'm done. There's going to be revision work to do. If you hire a copy editor, they're really going to be focusing on grammar and punctuation. But a lot of times a copy editor will dip their toe into content editing a bit. If there's some inconsistencies, they'll perform a basic fact check for repetition, sentence structure, style changes. And a lot of times they do make general content suggestions when things jump out at them. A proofreader really is pretty much solely focused on typos, punctuation, and grammar. So if nothing else, at least get a proofread. Most editors mark up the manuscript using word track changes, so please know the basics of technology. You will be passing revisions back and forth with your editor. So do the work, learn how to use track changes. There are very simple YouTube tutorials. This can be done. There's nothing harder than trying to work with an author who is FedExing pages where they've handwritten changes. Mistakes can be made. It wastes a lot of time for everyone. So really, basic word track changes. It's not hard, very easy. It's wonderful to work with. And most importantly, if you're unwilling to take an editor's advice and think you know everything, save your money. Don't spend, hundreds, thousands of dollars if you're just going to go, well, they don't know anything about writing. It's perfect. So, go into it knowing that they're there to help you improve this and take in their suggestions. That's not to say you have to follow everything they recommend, but go into it knowing you should follow a good amount if the advice is good.
Yeah, and I mean, no editor expects you to be 100% okay with every single change, but you need to trust that they know the industry, they know the market. So if you're not going to take an editor's advice, at least for the simplest of things, then also plan on maybe your book not doing so well, because the content is the heart of the book. The content is, the fact of what the people are drawn to. So if the editors, they have this very extreme knowledge about this subject, and they know the industry, they know what's working, they know what their audience is looking for with these particular topics, you really need to listen to your editors. And like I said, they're not expecting you to change absolutely everything about your book, but they do have really good insight. So just trust your editor, you guys.
Yes.
They know what's best. It's like trust your mama. Your mama knows best, okay? Your editor is right.
Exactly.
All right. How do you find a good editor? I know one right here.
Yes. Call me. Research. Pretty basic. You can start online. Ask other authors in your community for recommendations. We've talked about it before. It's always great to find author groups, whether it's local, in person, virtual right now, whether it's, on Facebook or, any groups like that. Find authors that write in your genre so you can ask them for recommendations. Read reviews, ask for referrals and references, always great. You can contact a local writers league or group, and a lot of times they have listings and they can give you names and contact information. And you want to find out what genres an editor specializes in and match with someone who has experience in yours. Someone who is really good at editing sci-fi won't be as helpful for a leadership book. And so you really want to pay attention to that. And it's always good to hire someone who is an experienced editor in the world of publishing. I mean, it's one thing if you're just going for a straight proofread, but many publishers are seeking something totally different than what, an English professor or your friend the librarian or your mother who's a great speller might consider fantastic. So publishers consider all sorts of aspects. And so someone who is simply a lover of books or an English major, they might not be able to give you the advice you need that an editor who has this publishing knowledge would be able to give to you. Another thing, you can always ask for a sample edit. And especially if you're investing a lot of money, don't be afraid to ask this of your editor. And usually, it's like the first 10 or so pages. And if they're worth their salt, they're going to say yes. And they're going to be expecting that. And it's also okay and recommended to price shop. Many editors with more experience are going to charge more. So take that into account. You might want to pay more for that kind of background. But there are others who are just starting out that might be more reasonable. Consider giving a newcomer a shot, especially if finances are a concern and, they're excited and they're like, oh yeah, let's get out there. Consider giving them a chance to work on that. But definitely make sure to compare and find someone that fits in your budget, but who is also going to do a really good job.
Definitely. And I think something to add to that is also, when you're figuring out which editor is going to be best for you, you really want to work with someone who understands your voice and understands what you're trying to do with the book. So if you are having just so many conflicts with your editor, maybe try, because there are very many different personalities that match and don't match. If there is someone who understands your voice, that you may get along with, it's important to also kind of establish that connection with them on a personal level, because it's going to make the whole process easier and them easier to trust if you can connect with them on some level.
Right. Engage in an interview process. I mean, definitely. It's like when you're hiring anyone, talk to them on the phone, do a Zoom call. That's one of the wonderful things during this pandemic, is that we've all gotten more used to doing Zoom calls, and you can really experience someone's personality, I think more. So that's been one of the pluses. So, do that when you're hiring an editor as well.
Exactly. Like when you're hiring someone for a position, you want to see that their core values and their, what they are passionate about links up with yours. It's kind of the same for your editor. You want to see if there is that initial synonymous connection, if you will.
Exactly.
All right. So, Erin, what is our assignment for this week?
This week, start doing your research. You obviously don't have to hire anyone, but just for fun, or maybe you'll use it in the future, find a few editors that you like that work in your genre, that have the personality you're seeking, that might work with you, that have the experience or mindset you admire, and decide whether you're ultimately seeking a content editor or just a copy editor or proofreader, and then make a short list for when the time comes. And it's never too early to begin the hunt for a good editor.
Definitely. Love it. Okay. Well, thank you, Erin. That was so insightful and definitely something that everybody really needs to hear because the editing process is so important. And, we want the best for your book. And I know you want the best for your book. So do what needs to be done and hire that editor. I promise you guys, it will be worth it. It is all, you're investing in yourself and making the book great. And so we all want you guys to succeed. So this is something that is very important that we thought you guys needed to know. As always, we guys love hearing your guys' suggestions. So if you have any suggestions for things you want us to cover during the landscape of publishing, editing, whatever your little heart wants to hear more about, let us know. And we will either make a whole video on it if there's enough to discuss, or we will give you a formulated answer in our DMs if it's not quite long enough for a whole video. But either way, we love hearing your guys' feedback. So make sure you comment on this video, tell us what you like, and we will see you guys next time.